are now over in the Artist's Alley, and right now I have with me Trevor Mueller. Hello, how's it going?
I'm doing great, and yourself?
I'm doing great. It's fun to be back here. Now, you're back here for how many years? Is this just a second year or?
Third year.
Third year, okay. How does it feel to be back here?
ASIN is my favorite show, actually. I absolutely love this show, and I was very, very honored to be invited back. I have a very close relationship with a lot of people that work here on staff or that volunteer. I've made a lot of friends with the fans that come to this show on a consistent basis. And I've even had some of the panel programming relations people tell me that I've kind of become a staple of the show with some of the panels, which is very, very humbling. So I was very, very honored and humbled to be invited back. Yeah.
Now, as you were mentioning the panels, you're hosting a few, correct? Can you tell us more about the subjects that they revolve around this time around?
Sure. So this year I'm hosting 3 different panels. 2 of them were yesterday.
Okay.
The first one was Breaking into Comics, and I actually did that with all of the comic book guests that were here at the show.
Okay.
And Breaking into Comics was essentially just kind of talking about the stories that we all had for getting into the industry, different stories that we've heard people have for breaking into the industry. And just basically things that people can do to get noticed by editors or to network with artists or writers or get a project in the works so that they can start making comics.
Sure.
And that's really kind of the theme around a lot of the projects that I do and a lot of the panels that I do, because not only am I a comic professional, I'm also a comic fan, and I love it when people bring work up to me. The second panel that I ended up doing is the one that they call the Constaple. This is the 3rd year in a row that I've done it. It's called Trevor and the Panel That Shall Not Be Named. And what's funny about that panel is that they actually do not include a description for it. It almost serves...
You have to go to it to figure it out.
You have to go to it to figure it out. And it's actually just a really, really entertaining time. I don't want to go into any kind of details, but again, it's become something that the fans have demanded. It's become something that the show wants to see every year. And so again, it's been very kind of an honor and a humbling feeling to do it. And I have a lot of fun doing that panel.
Sure.
So if you like to laugh, come to the Panel That Shall Not Be Named. Tonight I'm going to be doing a 3rd panel actually with one of the other comic book guests, Steve Horton.
Oh, okay.
We're going to be doing a self-publishing 101. A lot of the work that I've done, I've actually published myself. And being somebody who had to learn on his feet as he was trying to put these projects together, I want to provide an avenue for education for young creators to figure out how to put those projects together themselves. Again, I love to read comics. I want people to make comics. Typically when you end up going to a lot of these panels, people will come up to you during the Q&A session and say, hey, I've got a great idea for a story. And I always try to stop them right there. I'm like, I don't want to hear your idea. I want to read your comic. I want you to go out and I want you to make it. Last year I put on a writing comics panel, and I gave that advice to somebody. Today at this show, that person came up to me and handed me their first issue of their comic. So
That's awesome.
again, like it's really just kind of a good feeling to know that you've inspired somebody to do the work.
Now, let me see here. Is there any advice that you have for recurring panelists or people who want to host their own programming at conventions?
Absolutely. So public speaking is not something that I am accustomed to. I seem to be fairly good at it, and they keep inviting me back for it. But honestly, it was something that I struggled with quite a bit throughout, high school, middle school, and all that. And eventually just ended up taking a class, a public speaking class, to help me get in front of people, get used to talking in front of people. And so having practice public speaking is going to be helpful. Do it in class, do it in school, do it on your sports team, whatever you can do to kind of speak in front of a group. Get yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit and do it consistently. Practice makes perfect, right? I got a buddy, Alan Evans, who I've typically done making webcomics panels with before at other shows. Last year he was on my Making Webcomics panel. This year he pitched a series of 3 of those panels to the show, and they agreed to give it to him. And he was very nervous before the show because he has to do them by himself. He invited me on, and I'm like, they conflict with my panel times. I can't be there.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to be there tonight, at least for the last half of one. But so he's very nervous. He's like, what can I do? And I'm like, people at these shows are very young. They want that educational content that you're giving it to them, but you can tweak the way that you're giving it in funny stories or anecdotes that are entertaining. These kids like to be entertained. People want to hear a good story. And you've been in the webcomic business, Alan, for several years.
Some experience, then
exactly.
Go ahead and use that to your benefit.
Exactly. So giving out any of that experience or insight that he has from having worked on his webcomic is going to go a long way. And it's going to help him eat up that period of time, because an hour-long block is intimidating. It's a lot of time.
But if you can put in a story, it helps, and not only take up some time, but it can always spawn other interests for people or questions later on.
Exactly, exactly. And so essentially, you know, with the hour-long panels that I do at this show, I really kind of break it down into the following time blocks. I usually speak for about 30 to 40 minutes. I take questions for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then after that, I open it up for, you know, signings and thank yous and stuff like that. And that keeps things pretty easy, pretty basic, and it has a nice open flow. Other panel forums, like if you're doing like a Q&A or something like that, you know, obviously you can change that around a little bit, whatever you're most comfortable doing. But you're only ever going to do a panel that you're asked to do or that you pitch to do. So hopefully it's going to be a subject area you're at least knowledgeable about, have some experience on, and can speak about for a length of time.
Now, you've got two careers, correct? You've got, well, your comics, creating comics, and you've got advertising. How do the two influence each other?
Quite a bit. I mean, advertising is a very creative field. Comics also a very creative field. While I don't work on the creative side of advertising, I work on the media planning side. It's a lot of number crunching, right? It's a lot of research. But when we end up taking all of that research, we have to find a unique way to present it to the client that kind of tells a story. Right? It backs up, like I know, you know, the following things to be fact, but the client may not necessarily know that those are true. Having research to back it up and putting it in a presentable way that's visual and that tells the story that you're trying to tell definitely helps in that field. Comics are absolutely no different. The difference is that instead of telling research, I'm telling a fictional story, a fictional narrative. And so they do influence each other quite a bit. At the same time, working during the day, the 9 to 5, right, in advertising, where I'm kind of using the side of the brain that's more statistical and, you know, analytical, you then get to go home and unwind a little bit by using the more creative side of the brain and just kind of going into a world of pure fantasy. And that's, you know, very relaxing. It's a very nice way to unwind, especially after a long work week. So yeah, so it's been a real, you know, a real opportunity, I think, to kind of have both, and, you know, really something that I've been able to utilize to my advantage.
Nice. Now, as an author of webcomics, you have the responsibility for such titles as Temple of a Thousand Tears. What are the differences that are associated with working with print versus the virtual medium?
And this is something that people are still trying to define right now. The digital field is limitless in terms of what you can do. But if you want to make a print book out of something that you're putting on the web, there are certain restrictions that you have to end up adhering to, right? On the web, I can make an entire comic strip that lasts the length of, you know, several pages, right? Several screens worth. Below the fold, you can go. But in a print world, you can't necessarily do that unless you make like a gatefold page, and that's expensive. So you don't want to do that unless you want to spend a lot of money. You'd have to restrict yourself to certain specs, they call them. And so the challenge has always kind of been, you know, I don't want to say limiting, but tempering what you do within the digital field to ensure that you can create a print-like product. With the invention of tablets, obviously expanding out the digital possibilities that are on there, with the advent of interactive comics, with the advent of motion comics and comics that actually have verbal narrative, people acting out the scenes that are in there. The possibilities in the digital field are completely limitless. On the print field, obviously, it's a little bit more limiting, but still there's something about holding that book in your hand, the tactile approach.
It's nice having that up on the shelf per
Yes,
se.
yes. It's difficult for me to take my iPad and say, "Look at my impressive comic collection," you
Right,
know.
yeah.
But if I've got my bookshelf filled with graphic novels, you know, then people can sit there and say, "Oh, hey,
Wow,
you read
look
this
at all
title,
this,
this title,
yeah.
this title," you know. And I can also let them borrow it if they're trying to get into
Right.
comics. My girlfriend's completely new to the comic book field, and so I've been letting her borrow some of my stuff.
Sure.
So that she can kind of get into it. And, you know, she knows who Batman is, she knows who Superman is,
Right.
but Superman and Batman have had, you know, up until the relaunch of the New 52, histories that have been going on for 60 plus years, and it's very inaccessible to new readers. Whereas if you can get her something from like the Vertigo line, right? Like the first book she read was Why the Last Man.
Okay.
And she absolutely loved it. It was a character that she could relate to. It was a world that was a little bit of fantasy, you know, but not so far outside of the realm of possibility that she couldn't enjoy the story and wasn't taken out of it. Whereas when Batman's fist fighting aliens, she's kind of like, wait a minute, that's a dude from Gotham City. He knows some martial arts, but he's fighting aliens.
Yeah, I don't think
It's like
so,
Harry
yeah.
Potter fighting aliens. Like, you've totally just broken my suspension of disbelief, you know? So yeah, going back on topic, you know, the difference between digital and physical, very much, you know, day and night. So there's definitely a lot of different things that you can do in the digital field. In the print field, there are some flexibilities, but again, if you want to do one in the digital and then take it to the physical, you want to make sure that you're aware of those physical limitations to make sure that that transition is very easy and not very costly.
Yeah, makes sense. What does someone need to create a successful webcomic?
Well, then this is something that we talk about during our webcomic panels all the time. And essentially, you need a good story. You need the ability to consistently update on a regular basis when you say you're going to do it, preferably 3 times a week or more,
Oh, wow,
if you want to be successful at it. I mean, Alan, who does Rival Angels, updates his comic 3 times a week in full color. He's never missed an update, and he's done more than 600 pages in a row. The most popular webcomics on the internet cannot make that same boast. They may be bigger, they may have larger audiences, and those guys might make more money off of doing their webcomics,
Sure.
but they have not been able to maintain that consistent update schedule. And that is key for growing and maintaining an audience. And additionally, having avenues to interact with your audience on there. Comment section, forum, anything you can do to build community. That allows you to connect to your readers and your fans. That allows them to kind of bring people in and they can connect with you too. It kind of grows your community. It's basically social networking, but instead of on Facebook, you're doing it on your website. You know, so those are kind of, I think, the key things that I would recommend.
Let me see here. When writing stories that are child-oriented, such as Albert the Alien, mind you, it's really cute. I checked it out. Yeah. And Junkyard Chase, what challenges do you encounter between writing for children and writing for older adult age groups?
Writing for children is definitely a different animal. Writing for adults, I can write stories that, you know, basically appeal to me. As a writer, you want to write what you know, you want to write a story that you yourself would want to read. You never want to really write for somebody else because that means that you're going to make something that's trendy. You're not really going to be as passionate about it. You know, if you write a story that you're passionate about, if you're writing a story that you yourself...
can tell it when you're reading that.
You can tell it when you're reading it. You can tell it when you're working on it.
Yeah.
You're going to put more time and effort into the story. That same rule applies to both adult and children's stories.
Okay.
The trick is going to be content, right? With children's stories, you can still put action in there. You can still put violence in there. You can still put horrific events.
Right.
But you may have to come up with a more unique way of showing it, or more importantly, not showing it.
Right.
You know, you want to make sure that you're putting in content there that doesn't make you squeamish when a 5-year-old comes up to your table and starts thumbing through your book.
You don't want him to go.
Right. And you don't want their parents to smack their hand and be like,
Exactly.
no, don't touch
you
that
can't
book.
Look at that. Don't.
Yes, that is a no-no. You know,
Yeah.
so with Albert the Alien, for example, you know, I created a character that I was interested in. I'm a sci-fi nerd. I like aliens. And I thought the idea of kind of this fish out of water was really kind of funny. It's this foreign exchange student from another planet. He's come to Earth to learn about humans, to learn as humans do. And the idea of the story is to take ordinary, everyday things that we see and put them through a new pair of eyes, a new filter. And it makes the ordinary extraordinary. You know, and that's the fun about writing Albert. I can sit there and I can tell a million stories about this kid. You know, what happens when Albert goes to school? What's his first day of school like compared to yours? Yours, you're going to get locker assignments, you're going to get school pencils, you're going to make friends. Albert has to do all of that, but doesn't necessarily know the culture. What happens when the school bully tricks him into going up to the rooftop because there's a pool on the roof, right? Well, Albert just goes up there and goes, there's no pool up here, and jetpacks back down, and then goes, so there's no pool on the roof, but I'm going to make one. You know?
Yeah, a totally new perspective.
Exactly. You know, one of the jokes that we're doing in the next Reading with Pictures, Albert, you know, English isn't his first language. He's an alien. He's from another planet. So figurative language isn't something that he's used to. He takes everything literally. So when somebody says something like, it's raining cats and dogs outside, he's like, we must save them, you know, and runs. You know, they're hilarious stories you can tell with this character. And again, they're geared towards that childlike audience, but it's something that I myself as an adult would still want to read and still want to write. Right, yeah. Because it's funny. Yeah. It's genuinely funny. Junkyard Chase, you know, it's just a short story that I did. I love cartoons. I love Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes. Yeah. And essentially I wanted to try to tell a Wile E. Coyote story, but instead I used a robot chasing a dog through a junkyard. You know, the robot can get, you know, Wile E. Coyote gets an anvil dropped on his head, he falls down cliffs. Yeah. Everything terrible that you can imagine happens to him. I created a character, this robot, that can take that kind of abuse, and while it's violent, it's not really, because he's a robot. He can, like, his arm gets, you know, cut off, he can put another one on, you know?
It's a flesh wound.
Exactly, and that there's actually a scene in there where the robot does get hurt and he's not able to continue to chase the dog. And the dog is playing. The junkyard is dangerous. The robot wants to chase the dog out so he doesn't get hurt. And of course, all the terrible things that could happen to the dog are happening to the robot. That's the joke. But eventually the robot does get hurt and he's not able to continue chasing the dog who's playing. He's enjoying this scene. And the dog and the robot share this moment in there. Like, I wanted to change the tone to have them share this moment that I thought was really sweet, where the dog recognizes and understands playtime's over and one of us has just gotten hurt. So the dog immediately goes out and finds a replacement limb for the robot whose leg has been damaged. And the robot reattaches it and continues to try to escort the dog out, who's laughing and barking as he's running away because, he's still going to continue the chase.
It's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt, right?
Exactly.
And then once that person is better, you get to have fun and games again. It sounds very, very cute. I can't wait. I got to look at it. Now, your website also contains a consistent stream of reviews from movies who are, wait a minute, movies, video games, and comics. Sorry, lost my place. As a creator of artistic properties, what do you feel are the best methods to approaching or reviewing art?
I mean, it's very tricky because approaching different types of art, movies, music, comic books, everyone's going to have a different opinion, everyone's going to have a different genre that they prefer, and it becomes very difficult to kind of break it out in terms of entertainment. And having a background in film production, having a background in obviously making comics, and being, somebody who knows what they like and not afraid to vocalize what I don't, allows me to, kind of utilize my website as this forum for expressing that out.
Sure.
And so I try to kind of break things up into two segments: quality and entertainment. Entertainment are going to be those factors that are really kind of opinion. They're going to be personal to me. These are things that I enjoy. If you enjoy these, you might like this thing too. These are things I did not enjoy. If you do like these things, you might like this game or this movie. The other aspect of that is going to be quality. And quality is going to be those things that you can't really argue against. Right. It's going to be the cinematography. It's going to be the lighting. It's going to be the direction. It's going to be the pacing, the storytelling, you know. And it's, do these things work within the context of your narrative?
Okay.
You know, do you actually meet all of the requirements of storytelling? Do you tell something that is comprehensible, you know, that follows a good flow, that keeps your story moving forward, and that has a 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end, right? These are the ways that I tend to kind of approach a lot of the reviews that I end up doing. And while my reviews tended to start off a lot more ranty, where I was trying to review things that I did not enjoy, I've since kind of tempered that down a little bit to focus more on the positive, the things that I do actually like. There are a couple of reviews that I have in queue that I need to do for things that I watched that I did not enjoy, cough, cough, Moneyball. But a sports movie about math that has neither math nor sports in it. What?
A point being what? Exactly.
Now, right.
Yeah.
So, but people love Moneyball because, you know, it's a quality film. There's some really great scenes in it. Brad Pitt does a really good job. He's entertaining in it. Jonah Hill basically does what he normally does in the movie. But, you know, the question then becomes, like, how do you end up rating this movie? Because yes, it was nominated for several Oscars. There's clearly a level of quality there, but that ending to that movie just kind of fizzles out.
I haven't seen it yet, so yeah, okay.
Watch it if you want.
Watch it if I can get it for $1, right?
Yes, I would. If somebody else rented it, it's okay to watch.
Okay. It's one
you
of
won't waste
those
your time.
movies. Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily spend a lot of money on it. So yes. So again, that's kind of the scale that I end up using with the reviews, trying to measure against both quality and entertainment, and keep those two as separate as I possibly can.
Well, that makes sense. Let me see here. You're also the marketing director of Reading with Pictures, which you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. For those who are unaware what Reading with Pictures is, please tell us what it is, what your responsibilities are with it, and within the organization and everything.
Sure. Reading with Pictures is a nonprofit organization that's trying to get comics into classrooms. Okay. We've partnered with the American Libraries Association and Northwestern University. We've got board members that are in education, library studies, and professional comic book creators. Also people that are, you know, accustomed to nonprofit runnings and whatnot. It was founded by Josh Elder, who has actually made his career around making comic books for young readers. Started off on the Batman Strikes with DC, had a syndicated strip through Tokyo Pop called Mail Order Ninja, has done some work with Tokyo Pop on the StarCraft line, and so ended up during his lectures and workshops at libraries and schools, discovering that there was this need for comics.
They just don't seem to have them, but it brings kids to read.
Yes, kids love reading comics. It's got the highest circulation of any section of a library, and a lot of schools, mostly at the district level, are kind of opposed to bringing it in because they see comics as this form of entertainment. It's not necessarily an avenue for education. So the first anthology that we put together was a proof of concept that comics can be entertaining but contain educational material in there. There are stories in there about math, science, social studies, English, deep sea exploration, exploring the vastness of space. I introduced the Albert the Alien story in there, where, you know, you've got social situations that kids deal with in a K-12 environment, bullying, and also you learn a little bit about dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period, because Albert takes his class back in time to learn about dinosaurs, and then the teacher gets kidnapped by a pterodactyl.
Nice.
You know, so you get some really, really eclectic stories in there. But while the first volume was kind of our proof of concept, and it was a great way for teachers to utilize comics in their classrooms on an individual basis, it's still not necessarily convincing those district people that it can be a legitimate source of education. So at C2E2 2 weeks ago, we ended up introducing and announcing the graphic textbook. The Kickstarter for this is currently live. It will be done by the end of May.
Okay.
We're trying to raise $65,000 to produce Volume 2, which will be a graphic novel textbook for grades 3 through 6. We've partnered with our educational board members to create national core standard curriculums for 4 subject matters: English, science, social studies, and mathematics.
Okay.
And it is going to be a comic book that also contains study guides, test questions, homework assignments,
wow.
and curriculum guides for teachers. So find the Kickstarter campaign and pledge today, because we definitely need the help and the money.
Right.
And at the different pledge levels that we have on there, you can even get a textbook, a class set of textbooks for your class. You can get drawn into one of the stories that are in there. There's even a level where Josh Elder, our founder, will fly out to your school and give an entire day lecture to kids about the power of learning and education with comics, and he will stay after class and teach teachers how to teach with comics. So it's an incredible initiative. As the marketing director, awareness is a major factor of things that I do. Coming to shows like ASIN here and telling people about the project, about the work, and about the initiatives that we're trying to push forth is another thing that I do.
Okay.
Also, obviously, putting a public face on the organization, having interviews with yourself.
Exactly.
So, yes.
That's awesome. Oh, I love it. That gives me goosebumps, I'll be honest. It really does.
I mean, Mouse was required reading for me in high school, which is a comic book. It's the only comic book to win a Pulitzer Prize.
I remember.
And I ended up doing a panel down at Mid-Ohio-Con, where I had the director of art education for Columbus, as well as three comic book creators who do like historical fiction or have adapted classic literature into a comic book format, or that do like kids all ages kind of comic book reading. And one of the first questions that I asked while I was moderating this panel was, when did you first start reading comics? And most of them kicked in around middle school. And they said that they didn't do a lot of reading in general before comics. It kind of acted as this gateway to get them interested into reading more things that were at their peer level. And we ended up going through an hour-long series of questions where we were just kind of asking, just general questions about the importance of comics, the amount of research they put into using that visual medium, and the last question that I asked, and I did not know the answer to this, I did not know how this was going to go off, was what kind of student were you? And across the board, every single one of them was an A student. And I turned to the audience to close this panel by saying, I'm not going to say that reading comic books made these people better students. I am going to argue that reading made these people better students. And by their own admission, they were not doing a lot of reading before they started reading comics in middle school. If comics can play a role in getting kids reading, that's a cause I can get behind.
Oh, I'm completely with you. I completely agree. Now, how can people, you mentioned contributing, how can people contribute or contact you with the works?
Sure. So we have a brand new website, readingwithpictures.org. It's been refreshed as of this month. It now has content on there where you can get in touch, pledge or donate money, pledge to the Kickstarter while that is still live. You can also end up uploading curriculum guides for any teachers that have utilized comics in their classroom. You can also end up including any study guides or case studies that you've utilized in getting comics introduced into your schools. The idea here is that we are trying to create a forum through which teachers and librarians and educators can connect with each other and help start getting comics into classrooms and get those kids reading. So readingwithpictures.org is the website.
Okay. Now, let me see here. Got a few more. Now, is there anything else, thinking back on Albert the Alien, is there anything else that you want to tell fans out there about the comic?
It's a fun all-ages adventure. You can only purchase it through me. I'm trying to get a store up this year so that it can be purchased online.
Now you have to tell them how awesome it was when you were telling me earlier. Was it the last show that you were at, or the show that you introduced this?
Yeah, so it premiered 2 weeks ago at C2E2. I ended up doing a very large print run for Albert the Alien. I self-published it myself. I paid my artist, Gabriel Bautista. I contributed my own time, obviously, to this. I invested my own finances. I put a business plan together behind this book. I want Albert to be a success. And the first show that it premiered at, I sold through about a fourth of my books, a fourth of my stock.
That's awesome.
Which is not something that you would anticipate happening at the first show. It's really kind of showing me that people feel the same way I do. They love this little alien.
Like I said, I was looking through it earlier, and it's really cute.
It is.
It's fun, and it's realistic, and you're going, kids can go, yeah, I understand, and I can relate to it.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun to write. I hope it's a lot of fun to read. People obviously support it and really enjoy it. So I hope that they continue to do so, and that there can be future adventures of Albert soon.
Yeah. Now, is it important to you with Albert that it's a good story for all ages?
I definitely try to keep the content accessible to all ages. There are the occasional things that pop up in there that might be more appropriate for a slightly older reader. Albert's recommended for readers 7+. And the reason is because Albert occasionally uses vocabulary words that are a little bit larger. So readers under the age of 7 may need a little help pronouncing those words. You want to put that into a young reader's book so that they can learn some new vocabulary. Additionally, with the fact that one of the main characters is a bully in there are some situations in there that may be a little sticky for some younger readers. The idea is to include those in there so that you can see how Albert deals with them and kind of increase the dialogue with your parents and or any counselors in the school on how they can handle bullying. Every time I talk to parents or teachers, they keep talking about how bullying has just become this virus in schools. It is prevalent, and it is adapted significantly beyond what it was when I was growing up with the access to digital content. There are now apparently virtual bullying or digital bullying where kids are like tweeting things. You don't even have to say anything to anyone's face anymore to devastate them. How do you deal with a situation like that? And can I use Albert as a vehicle to help get that information out there? That's something that I'm occasionally trying to do with some of the adventures, and that's what we did with Albert the Alien is using the hall pass, where Albert's just trying to go use the bathroom, but the school bully has other plans. He stops him in the hallway, and he's ready to give him a swirly and do whatever bullies do, and Albert has to think up ways to outsmart him, and get to his destination. The whole while, his urgency to use the bathroom
I gotta go.
Right, gets worse and worse, which puts in a little bit of funny and keeps it honest.
Right.
But at the end of the story, I have a moral of the story page where the educator, the adult in the story, says, this is the way that Albert dealt with this situation, but what are some other healthy ways that Albert could have dealt with this situation? And that increases dialogue, right? That encourages kids to talk to each other, to talk to their parents, to talk to their teachers and school counselors, if they are being bullied, to figure out how they can do that, how they can deal with those kinds of situations in a healthy and productive way. And that's one of the things that I love to do with Albert, other than tell goofy stories, and tell an entertaining tale. So yeah, Albert's a lot of fun. I hope that we can do a lot more with him.
I can't wait to see more.
And assuming we end up getting the Kickstarter off, we will be doing another Albert adventure in there. Albert the Alien It's a Figure of Speech, where Albert will be learning about metaphors and similes, because again, he takes figurative speech literally. And so when people say things like
time flies.
Yeah, time flies, he's like, no it doesn't. Or, hey kids, it's time to rack your brains. And he has this equation in his head, torture rack plus brain equals your brain being tortured. Why would you do that? It's just a lot of fun to play with.
Oh, awesome. Now, is there anything else that you want to say out to fans who are here listening?
For those of you who support the work, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm very humbled by your generosity. For those of you who are looking to make comics, the best advice that I can do, the best advice that I can say is don't talk about it, do it. The first work that you do is not going to be your best work. If it is, you're not getting better as you go. What you want to do is consistently go out, continue to make comics, ask people for their advice, and take that constructive criticism and apply it to your next project. do the work, make comics, show it to me at a show. I would love to read it.
Well, Trevor, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much.
So much for taking the time,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.